Microsoft Visual Studio is a primary IDE from Microsoft when developing applications or programs. This includes websites or web applications, web services, mobile games, and of course, Windows applications. Microsoft Visual Studio is packaged along with the following languages, such as C Sharp, VB.NET, Visual F Sharp, Visual C++, just to name a few. So what I'll be showing you in this video tutorial is how to create a project using Microsoft Visual Studio as our primary IDE. By the way, the current version that I'm using is 2017, which is one version lower than the current version. The current version, by the way, is 2022. So where can you find your version of Visual Studio installed? You can actually click File here, then you have there About, then of course you have Microsoft Visual Studio. Then I have here Microsoft Visual Studio Community Edition. So I'm also using the Community Edition of Visual Studio. There's actually three uh, edition to choose from when downloading Visual Studio. The first one is Community, which is this one. Of course, you also have your Professional and Enterprise. If you're going to go to visualstudio.microsoft.com/downloads, you can actually download the web installer from there, as you can see. Um, so we have here a community, professional, and enterprise. So I'm actually using this one, the community edition, as what I've been telling you guys about, since it's free for students, open source contributors, and individuals. By the way, when we're talking about Visual Studio, we're not talking about Visual Studio Code. In some of my video tutorials, by the way, I am using Visual Studio Code, but in our case right now, we will be using Visual Studio. Now, let's try to create our project. So you can actually create your project by clicking File, then you have here New, then you have Project. Okay, so you can also, okay, let me just try to click. So the new project dialog box will appear. So let me just try to click cancel. Or you can use the keyboard shortcut Control plus Shift plus N. Okay, so just try to click it again. Now, these are the different projects that we can create here in Visual Studio using C Sharp as our primary language. If you wanted to use Visual Basic, you can also do so. Or if you wanted to use F Sharp, you can also do so. So I'm going to expand. So you can create Visual Basic with Windows Desktop. Same also with Visual C Sharp. You can also create web. There's almost no difference between Visual C Sharp and Visual Basic in terms of the different applications that you can create. It's just a matter of trying to use the language of your preference. Okay. Now let's try to create our project. Let's try to select our console app.NET framework. Okay, I've already selected it. Let's try to create our solution this time, or our project. So let's try to call this one con test console application. Now make sure that you have here a check mark on create directory for solution so that we can organize our files and store it on one um, directory. We don't need to have this one checked, add to source control, since we don't want to add our test project to the source control to. Okay, then we can also select the framework that we wanted to use. In our case, let's just try to select the default framework, which is 4.5.1. Then let's try to click OK. So Microsoft Visual Studio has already created our um, solution. Okay, so this is our main application. Okay, our main method. Okay, so this is the solution explorer. This is where we can find the different uh, properties of our console application. So we can click here, we can expand to the properties, so select assembly for references. We can select the different references. Of course, we have our program. Under program, we have our main method. Okay. Now, if we wanted to create another method, okay, let's try to create public void sample. Let's use void sample. We can see that it's also added here. Okay. Now, this part will actually show us the different, if we're using Windows form, we can actually see the different properties of our forms. But in our case right now, since we're just basically creating a test console project or solution, so there's no, we couldn't see anything, we couldn't see any properties here. Okay. So let's try this time to write something console dot um, right line. Okay, try to click hello world. Okay. Now we can directly click start to run the application, or we can also click build, then build the solution. So in our case right now, let's try to click first build. Okay. Build one succeeded, failed zero, up to date zero, skip. Then let's try to run this time the application. Okay. Now, as you've noticed, the application just popped out and it automatically closed. So how do we prevent that? That usually would happen if the user is not using the keyboard, or hasn't uh, or did not, or the application is not accepting any user input. So in order first to prevent from happening, in order for it to prevent it from happening, let's try to ask the user, or let's try to make sure that the user enters something or uses the keyboard. So we can do so by adding this code, console dot read key. Okay, then click build, rebuild the solution, then click start. Okay, so we already have it here, hello world. Okay, now once I use my keyboard, any key on my keyboard, the application will be terminated. Now, one of the things that you have to consider, by the way, when you're running Microsoft Visual Studio, since it's generating an executable file or exe file, is to check for your Avast, especially if you're using Avast. I have no experience in any other um, antivirus, but for Avast, make sure that you create an exception for your application. Otherwise, Avast will continuously block the application every time you try to run or start the application. If you find the contents of this blog useful or interesting, don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button. And if you wanted to be notified every time a new video is uploaded, don't forget to hit the bell notification button. Thanks.